Welcome aboard, folks. We're going to do an audio check. So if those of you in the comments want to confirm you can hear us. Excellent. So we are just preparing to get underway here. We haven't quite started really tying off lines yet. So we are holding tight for that to get going. We are expected to get underway in about 10 minutes. You can see the line handlers up on the bow there just starting to really get going. I will also warn you guys, it is 90 degrees out right now. So we've got our gear hidden in some interesting places to keep it cool. So I'm going to do my best to answer comments, even though the computer is now sitting on the floor. We've still got some gear to set up, so just hang tight for a couple of minutes, and then we'll get our commentary going. Okay, Battleship people, we have an exciting day ahead of you. Our departure time is expected to be 11 o'clock this morning. Our tugs are currently tied up along the port side of the ship. Once we pull away, we will have a little bit more flexibility for the starboard side. We have an anticipated arrival in Camden at 1:25. We're going to be moving fairly slow. Last cruise was right around 4 knots. We expect to be going about the same for this one. Though legend has it, our goal today is going to be to hit 6.5 knots. At the Philadelphia Navy Yard. But nonetheless, the record that we still want. We are unfortunately Jupiter alongside us today, so we do have 4 tugboats, but none of them are Jupiter. Jupiter is one of the original tugs that launched us into the Delaware River December 7th, 1942. Jupiter had been doing a lot of work to join us for this cruise, and they got the engines running, and the ship is in top condition and ready for it, and they got bogged down in some paperwork. So unfortunately, they were not able to join us because of that. They didn't get all the Coast Guard sign-off that they needed in time. So while we look forward to seeing Jupiter around the Delaware, she will not be with us today, unfortunately. So for those of you who haven't heard, the whole purpose of this exercise. So back in late March, we left Camden, New Jersey. That is our usual home. We are typically berthed there year-round. We've been berthed there since 2001 to come 6 miles downriver to the Philadelphia Navy Yard for repairs. We're going to talk a lot about the repairs today, but all told, it was $10 million of work to the underwater hull. It's primarily preventative maintenance, not some sort of catastrophic damage that caused us to need to go, but it was a big $10 million project. We were out of the water for 78 days, and we left that dry dock last Friday. Since then, we have been here in beautiful Paulsboro, New Jersey. Paulsboro has it's deeper water than our berth in Camden, so we were able to do a last-minute task before heading home. That last-minute task being taking off 500,000 gallons of ballast water. So that ballast water was brought on board to make the keel level as we came off the blocks. Otherwise, our bow is significantly lighter than our stern, and our bow would pop up first. That causes a lot of stress on the stern, could cause some damage, particularly to our screws, our propellers, our rudders. So we did not want that to happen, so thus we weighed down the bow with that roughly 2,000 tons. So we took off all that water while we were here, and now that the water is gone and we are sitting a little bit higher in the water, we can safely return to Camden. Let's see what's up with our audio quality, folks.
This is Ryan.
Okay, we'll see if that's an improvement. I will warn you folks that as we cruise to Delaware today, our internet tends to get a little choppy, but we're going to do the best we can. Hopefully it goes nice and smoothly.
Works for me. One MC isn't working, but we'll line up over there.
Excellent. Looks like we fixed our sound problems. We've got the radio going now. That's the other voice that you hear. We are making sure that everybody knows when we pull that line. That was the ship's horn you just heard. We have confirmed that does work. Sounds like we're going to blow the horn a few times today. That is Ryan's voice that you hear on the radio. He is running around right now. Probably is the one who blew the horn. He's also going to be doing helping shift colors. So shift colors is a fairly simple process. Once we get underway, the last line has been separated. We are no longer severed tied to the pier. We will pull down the ensign, the American flag that's on the stern, and the naval jack that's on the bow. You can sort of see from this angle, there's a teeny tiny little person up there in the bow who's going to pull that naval jack down. And then the large American flag, the large ensign, the holiday flag, it's a 20 by 30 foot flag. It's going to go up on midships between the stacks. And then we've got a couple other flags we're going to raise up too. Once the ensign's up, we've got a Navy flag, a New Jersey state flag, something else, I think. Our big battle flag is going to go up. Yes. So the big Wetsu flag, it's big, it's yellow. You can't miss it. You unfortunately won't be able to see it from this angle, but for those of you who are tuning into the news, and I see 2 or 3 choppers circling us, so I'm sure we're on the news, might be able to see it. Otherwise, you can see it all over our social media and our pictures elsewhere. It is a flag that was made by the ship's crew towards the end of the ship's service. We don't have an exact date when it was made, 88, 89, under Captain Tucker. And it says Wetsu on it, which is why we call it the Wetsu flag. So Wetsu is an acronym that is used to, it stands for We Eat This Stuff Up. I'll let you use your imagination on what else that might stand for. The crew made it as their sort of fun flag to fly during special occasions. The only time that I've seen 2 photos of it flying, most iconically at our decommissioning. We were fortunate enough to find it on board about a year ago. So it has flown on our cruise down here. We're going to fly it on our cruise back. We weren't able to guarantee we were going to fly it until we got here. We're keeping a watchful eye on the wind. It is an artifact. But fortunately, the wind's blowing not too strong today, so we should be in good shape to fly the Wetsu flag. The flags you see off our bow here, the colorful ones, those are just friendship flags. They're decorative. They're just pretty. They are not in an order that spells anything, even though each one of those flags means a letter or a number or something like that. They are in a prescribed order, but it is a nonsensical order just to be pretty. We do also have them off the stern. Drac is not on board today. We wish he could join us. He's got other ships and things to take care of. I'm sure he's not too heartbroken. It's 90 degrees. He comes from a much colder climate. We did do a live stream on leaving the dock. We have done a live stream for every single cruise so far. So if you go over to our main page, you can watch those. Check the live section as opposed to the regular video section. I'm going to try to answer comments as we go, folks. I will warn you, though, that we are in a pretty hot climate here, so we've hidden our computer away someplace that it is not as exposed to the sun, which makes it a little bit more difficult to answer comments today than on previous occasions. As I mentioned before, we are leaving Paulsboro today in just a few minutes. We have an expected departure time of 11 o'clock. It is 11 o'clock right now. So as soon as they are done pulling those lines, which is close, we are getting there, we will officially be getting underway. I expect the initial part of this cruise to go a little slowly as our tugboats get organized. We are also keeping a watchful eye on all of the watercraft out there on the Delaware. It looks like lots of boats decided to come and join us, but we got to make sure that we're keeping a safe distance from everybody. So we'll keep it nice and slow so the Coast Guard and the local boat police can keep them at a safe distance. Never cut off a battleship. We don't stop for nothing. Ryan will be joining us on the live stream as soon as he is available. Like I said, he is going to be shifting colors, moving the ensign from one place to another. So hang tight on that. He will join us when he can. We do know that we will be firing some of the guns today. We will, of course, not be firing the big 16-inch guns. That's not safe for anybody. But we will fire some of the, looks like it's going to be a saluting gun. The exact schedule for that remains unclear to me. You'll know it when it happens. But we do have gun crew on board. We have 4 tugs who are doing the work today. They're all McAllister boats. Our tug captain is Joe Benton. He has been our tug captain for the last 3 cruises. So we are very excited to have him back on board. He is on the 05 level. So we are filming from the 08. So he's 3 levels below us. The 05 is the traditional place for a river pilot, a harbor pilot to be. So that is where our river pilot is as well. And he's up there making sure that all of our tugs are where they need to be. So they've got all their radios are communicating with our 4 tugs. We are moving 100% under tug power today. We will not be firing up the ship's engines. That would be really cool. We would love to get our boilers going. It is not practical. It is not legal. It is not possible. So we are not doing that. But the tugs are going to get us there fairly quick. We expect it to be a roughly 2.5-hour voyage today. For those of you who have not joined us before, we are doing this as we complete a 78-day dry dock period. It's been a long 78 days, closer to 90 since we actually left Camden. So we are very glad to be returning home. The work in dry dock was all told fairly simple. We painted the bottom of the ship. We took a look at our cathodic protection, replaced it. We looked at every single one of the through-hole openings and confirmed that they are still watertight. We had about a 10% failure rate. So we repaired those. We did a little bit of repair work on the steel where it got thin on the bow. We figured that out through some ultrasonic testing where we tested the entire hull for its thickness. Just confirming that everything is the way that it should be, and 98% of the hull was. We had a little bit of a thin spot near the bow. Again, if you want details on our time to dry dock, we made like 75 videos about it. There's plenty of videos to tell you all about that project. Elsewhere in our project, we also did a little bit of work on our propeller shafts. Again, keeping the water on the outside is our top goal. So that's really all we did while we were there. It was short, sweet. And then we came back here to Paulsboro last Friday, took off 500,000 gallons of ballast water, and now we are headed home. We should be leaving any moment now. We've had some questions here in the comments, and I'm trying to read the comments best I can, guys, about our gun turrets. They do not rotate anymore. Iowa can rotate theirs. We're very lucky, or they're very lucky that they can do that. Good for them. Our electrics have been significantly more demilitarized than theirs in our turrets. So it is just not really possible at this point. We could reconnect all of the electrics, but we just spent $10 million to go to dry dock. It's not a priority project for us right now. Looks really cool, isn't a priority. We can elevate our barrels. They generally stay at the same elevation they're at right now. That is their sort of saluting angle. They look very nice at that angle. They look very pretty when people walk up to them. We like them at that angle. We can lower them when we need to do work on them. We did that last summer. It's done by hand. It's tedious. We don't like doing it because it is very, very slow. Our engines do not run because we're not allowed to have them run. That is a rule by the Navy. When the Navy gave us the ship, they gave us a roughly 4-page. Okay, that's the ship's horn. I hope it is as fabulously loud for you as it was for me. We are right underneath where the horn is, so it is very loud up here. But that means we are officially underway. I can see the gentleman on the bow has pulled down our naval jack. Means the ensign on the stern, the American flag, has come down, and our very, very large American flag, it is a 20 by 30 foot flag, has just come up on amidships right along the center. So we are officially moving. So this first little bit is going to be slow. We're not moving too much. We are just pulling away from the pier. We're gonna get all of our tugs organized. So give us just a few moments while we do that. I'm gonna do what I can. All told, we expect this to be a 2.5-hour cruise. And yet, our ship's horn does not go off of steam anymore. We do not have steam on board for any of our systems. The boilers don't work, so we're not doing steam. It is all compressed air now, which works pretty well. For those of you who heard it, it's nice and loud. If you missed it before, we do expect to have all sorts of fun sound effects as we go throughout the day. We have a special guest on board, Captain Halley. He is the commanding officer of the pre-commissioning commanding officer of the new USS New Jersey, SSN 796, which means that we got to bring aboard New Jersey, arriving about 90 minutes ago. So we're very excited to officially have a... So we've been using the 1MC to make those sorts of announcements. Our current location for our camera on the 08 means that we're not hearing much of the 1MC from here. We have speakers in some places. It's not as great on the outside where we are here. So as we start our special tugboat here, and that is the Robert E. McAllister, some of our volunteers are aboard. The volunteers are what keep this place going, so we are very excited to have them on the tug. Therefore, over there, we do have a few of our volunteers on board today as well, helping us out with a few projects. While we're underway, in addition to just keeping eyes on everything, shifting colors, we're also doing tank inspections. We like to call it a tankless job. It's not easy, that's for sure. And they are going and making sure that there is no water coming into the ship anywhere. We officially have gunfire. Excellent. If that startled you, it startled me too. We're going to be doing that throughout the day. I don't have a schedule for us. It will happen when it happens. So that looks like that was actually done by Captain Halley. So that's great. So again, Captain Halley is the commanding officer of the pre-commissioning crew for SSN 796, the new USS New Jersey. So it's not often that we get to have commanding officer of New Jersey on board New Jersey. So always very nice to have. And folks, I'm going to let you know that I am keeping track of your comments, so please keep them coming. However, this is a family-friendly channel, so if you're not being family-friendly, I'll remove your comments. So with the horn and the shifting colors and the gunfire, we are just starting to really get away from the pier. So hang tight. This is going to be a roughly 2.5-hour cruise. So stick with us today as we go about 6 miles down the Delaware. Yeah, the electrical wiring in our gun turrets is, well, honestly, a lot of it's missing. And what is left is really not sound. So yeah, we would have to rewire large parts of the turret to get it to rotate, or to do really much of anything. So yeah, not something that we're prioritizing. Yes, so it is 11 a.m. local time with a 1:30 arrival, so roughly 2.5 hours from now. We will have a second live stream today, too. We will have drones up in the air once we get to Camden. We expect to start that right around 1 o'clock. So once that gets going, I'll send you guys in that direction as well. They'll have some really nice shots from the air. Internet on the ship today is brought to you by a hotspot from my phone. It is fairly sparse. There are chopper feeds, but you probably got to watch that on your local news stations. Looks like Fox and ABC might be out there. If you see them, make sure you put it into the chat so other people know how to watch. So future projects for the Battleship, we do not have rotating the gun turrets as one of our future projects.
Zip ties. McAllister Fenton was upside down.
Yeah. Yes. So for our future projects, what we are going to do, first priority, we are going to paint the sides of the ship. So we painted the underwater hull. Up next, we are going to paint the above water hull, so the gray part. So while you're watching today from one of the news stations, you might see that our above water hull is not the prettiest, but it will get a fresh paint job. We decided not to paint it while we were in dry dock because, well, the tugboats out here keep messing up our paint. We love our tugboats. They're McAllister. They have done their best not to mess up our paint, but let's be honest, it's inevitable. So we are waiting to paint that until we get home. We don't have an exact plan yet. Stay tuned on this channel. If you're unfamiliar, we post 5 nights a week, Monday to Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So we will continue to update you on that project as we get there. Other upcoming projects, we are completing our deck. You can see how beautiful it is. It's all teak. It's gorgeous. Courtesy of our lovely deck crew, led by Jay Baker and his team. Someone asked if Jason Hall is still on board the ship. Bad news for you. He passed away about 6 years ago, so he's not with our crew anymore. He is our previous curator. Real nice guy. We're thinking about him today. As you can see, we are starting to pull away from the pier. We're in a bit of a tight spot here, so it's going to be a little difficult to rotate our camera around too much today. But you can see that we are getting away from our pier. Which means that we are really starting to get going. We haven't really started any forward momentum yet, just pulling away from the pier so we can get our tugs reorganized. I imagine this part's going to take a little while. It's going to sort of be the slow part of our cruise today. We have been painting the superstructure. We actually just painted the smokestacks last summer. If you haven't seen them lately, they look gorgeous right now. They got some metal work on them to repair a few of the pinholes in them so we don't get those rust streaks that we previously had. So the smokestacks are all done. The rest of the superstructure is mostly getting painted as we paint, as we do the deck. So we tear up the old teak. We have to redo the steel underneath. Usually it needs, at the very least, removing the old paint. In some cases, it's got pinholes, so that work is being repaired. And then we are doing any repair work and then repainting of the verticals, the walls around it, as we do the horizontals, as we do the decks. So we are slowly but surely working our way through the superstructure as far as painting that goes. We did some of the really tough spots last year when we did the smokestacks. That required an enormous amount of scaffolding and cranes and work, so not something we can do easily. Elsewhere, we are continuing to add to our tour route, like up here on the 08 where we're filming today is hopefully going to be added to our tour route soon. Our volunteers have been hard at work at it before we moved to get it ready for guests, and we just need to add in the final details like fire suppression, things like that. So once all of that gets added, we can let people come up here. We are doing our best to pan around and show our tugs here, guys, but we're a little limited. We're kind of in this metal box up here. So that's what our tug looks like. They're all McAllister. We're very excited to have them here. We have an expected arrival time in Camden at about 1:24, so roughly 2 hours from now. We have a specific time for pulling to Camden because that is high tide. So we might have to do a little bit of hurry up and wait just to make sure that we hit that high tide. We were unable to dredge while we were gone. There is a fish moratorium. The fish are spawning. We couldn't dredge, so we're sort of trapped. We are unfortunately tied to such a limited point of view because that's the state of the bridge that we're in. It has a lot of features around us. It just only has so much room. So therefore, we've got a fairly limited view today. But that's okay. It means that we get this really high up perspective. Some of our other cruises we filmed from a little bit lower down, which means we maybe got a slightly wider viewpoint, but couldn't quite see as much of the ship. So we're moving things around. We are not going to try and beat Kids' speed record today. Kids' speed record, I think they got up to 14 knots. Our ship is much heavier. We are going a much shorter cruise. Because of that, we will not be trying to reach that at all. So this will fortunately not be a full 3 hour long cruise. We are not quite going Gilligan's Island today, but it should be about 2 hours before our arrival. Go the Walt Whitman Bridge. We do not need to go under the Ben Franklin. We happen to have our pier right between the Walt Whitman and the Ben Franklin, so we'll get fairly close to the Ben Franklin, but we're not actually going to go underneath it. We have been underneath the Walt Whitman fairly recently. We did it on our way here approximately 90 days ago. It is a tight squeeze. We are keeping a watchful eye on things. Fortunately, we're not having some extreme high tide or anything today. We had about 15 feet of clearance last time, so easy. But our tugboats, of course, are doing all the complicated work to make sure that that's done safely. We did need to remove the very top of the ship. Typical arrangement with that mast and that radar, we do underneath the bridge. For those of you asking, we are filming 08 level today. So this is officially considered to be the primary con, the primary steering position. How often it was actually used seems to depend on each individual captain. I am 8 levels up from the main deck. I would call nothing about this steering position convenient. It does have a fairly wide open space for being able to walk around and see things. So I guide and say, yep, our tugboats are where they need to be. It's a little difficult for the camera, but you can kind of see we've got this space here. So it's easy for a person to walk around, if not our camera. You can also see why we have a bit of a limitation. We are sort of stuck right between a pair of stanchions for filming. Most of the time, the ship would be steered from the 04 level. That is our battle con. It's got that thick arming tower. And honestly, it's a little difficult to see from in there. You definitely wouldn't want to watch the cruise from in there. And it has an area outside of it with glass windows, which also gives you that viewpoint that you get up here. Again, with lots of stanchions. We filmed from up there on the first cruise. This is number 4. We are still getting our tugboats secured, so hang tight on that. You can see we are still sort of moving around just a little bit, but not too much while we get our tugboats secured. We don't have a date for putting the mast back on. We have been talking about digging the mud out from underneath our berth. until we have a better handle on when we can dredge, we aren't making a final decision on when the mast goes back on, just because if we have to go back underneath the bridge in a couple of months, there's no point in putting the mast on for 6-8 weeks. So to be determined on that one. Don't you worry, we'll put the mast back on. We will tell you all about it. It'll be all over this channel. We love to do a time lapse of that sort of thing. That's what we did last time. So unfortunately, our engines actually don't have a sort of mileometer on them, if you will. They did not keep a total track of miles steamed. It'll tell us what their last batch is since the last times they had major maintenance on them, but it doesn't keep a running total. We have some pretty good guesses. We know that in World War II, the ship steamed 200,000 miles. We know in 1988, 1989, most of the 1980s, they kept a log of how many miles they steamed in that year. It seems to be a little bit of a guess in certain years. Thus, 200,000 during World War II is probably not quite that precise. But we have a ballpark figure from that. We do not have records from every year. We're missing a lot of the 1950s. Fortunately, we do have someone who is going through those logs. However, those logs still only say so much information. So we're working on collecting a total, but we don't have one right now. We don't have full plans yet for our dredging, exactly what will happen. We might come back here to Paulsboro. We might not have to. When we know, we will put it all over this channel. We love to do lots of updates. Yes, we do have port bodies on board for the cruise today. So we did have some facilities. We do not currently have running water. The crew would normally get that just by purifying river, ocean water, whatever. We do not do that anymore. So we've got simple systems. We have about 80 people on board today. The vast majority of them working as line handlers. They're doing the work keeping us tied up to our tugs, and then untying us from the pier and then retying us up to the pier when we arrive in Camden. So we've got quite a few people on board. We also, of course, have some special guests. Captain Halley, the commanding officer of USS New Jersey 796, so an active New Jersey captain. So we're excited to have him on board. His ship has yet to be commissioned. 796 is set to get commissioned in September, I believe on the 14th. Don't you worry, we will cover it on this channel too. We've been following along with 796 for a long time now. Since before this channel started, the museum has been following along with 796. We went down to Virginia where she was built for her christening a few years back. So we will definitely be keeping tuned with her commissioning when that happens. We do have some of BB-62's crew members on board as well. Saw Ken Kirsch earlier today. He's actually in charge of our gun crew, but he served on board the Vietnam War. I'm sure he's not the only one, but is the one that comes to mind right now. New Jersey and Intrepid absolutely did sail together. One of Intrepid's most famous photos was one of the times she gets hit by a so it can become drinking water. So we have 5, I think it's 5, could be 6. Desalination plants is not the word that the ship used. I'm drawing a blank on what we call them. But we do have them on board. That's how they would make their own water. For those of you curious, yep, it is fabulously hot out here today. Last I saw, it was supposed to reach nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit. For those of you who don't use Fahrenheit, good luck. I only speak Fahrenheit. Metrics, not our style. The turrets are getting painted. You can see that the gun barrels there are gorgeous already. They got painted not too long ago. So we are painting them as we go. Evaporators, thank you guys. I knew that somebody would come up with a word that I absolutely needed. So the earlier New Jersey is BB-16. She was sunk off of one of the Carolinas. She was sunk in a test by Billy Mitchell to find out whether or not airplanes can sink battleships. Spoiler alert, they can. It also helped that there was absolutely no crew on BB-16s. There were no damage control. Every once in a while, they will send someone out to go visit her and check on the wreck. She makes an excellent example of sort of seeing how wrecks dissolve over time, because they can do a little bit more archaeological work on her than you would want to do on, say, a war grave. She is less controversial to dive on. So Ryan is going to make his way up here when he gets the chance. He is doing tank inspections today. It is, as we like to say, a tankless job. So tank inspections here are all about just making sure that there is no water coming into the ship. Top concern spots for us are where the propellers, the shafts, come through the hull. We don't really think that we're going to find too much there, but to be honest, it's one of we did the most amount of work on while we were in dry dock. So we are somewhat concerned that perhaps that work led to pinholes, things like that. So we're keeping a watchful eye on it while we're on this cruise especially. We did keep a watchful eye on it our first cruise when we initially left dry dock, when we initially flooded the dock, we watched it. So far, we haven't found anything, but it is something we do need to watch. We did also inspect the 160 through hole openings throughout the ship while we were in dry dock. So we're bringing in, say, while drinking or for our boilers, our propulsion plants. We do not use that anymore, so they've all been sealed shut. So we inspected all of them. So today, while we're underway, we are confirming that those are tight. We've got a team of 10 out there, including our usual host, Ryan, doing those inspections. They will come up. So he will come up alongside us to join us for our chat when he gets the chance. So our being done by 4 tugboats. They're all McAllen. They are being commanded by Captain Joe Benton. So he is on the 05 level, just a few levels below our feet. I don't think we're going to, we can't really quite see him. We've got a bit of a tight spot here on the 08, but he is below us. Keeping a very watchful eye on where all of our tugboats are, making sure that everything is nice and secure and safe, and we're making all of our tight turns. We do have a difficult turn ahead of us and some difficult maneuvering. We need to get underneath the Walt Whitman Bridge. Fortunately, we don't expect any real excitement there. We do fit nice and easily. We've got about a 15 feet clearance. Last time that we did it, there were some of the bridge workers underneath the bridge waving hello to us as we went under, which was honestly the scariest thing about it because we didn't know the bridge workers were there and they kept yelling, and people yelling made us concerned that we were going to hit something, but they just wanted to say hello. I don't have a timeline for how long until we get to the bridge. We are expected to arrive in Camden at 1:30, so that's 2 hours from now. So I expect maybe 1 o'clock, 90 minutes from now, but it all depends. And even though technically it's not called underway while you're using a tugboat, we're a museum ship. We don't get underway. This is as close as we're going to get, so we're going to keep using the word underway because it's the simplest way to do this. We're pretty lucky that New Jersey was preserved. A lot of ships were not. Honestly, there's 2 big reasons for it. One, the ship was around for so long that there was a whole lot of people who were, it was very important to them. So people have been advocating for it for like 50 years by the time that we actually became a museum in 2001. We have records of them starting to collect for the museum as far back as World War II. So that helps. Also being named after a state, battleships tend to get preserved if their states can take them. So we're very lucky. And honestly, the ship lasted so long that she was a bit of a dinosaur and was very unusual by the time she was decommissioned. So that helped preserve her and all 3 of our sisters. Right now, we're moving pretty slowly. We are definitely moving. We are underway, but we are moving very slowly. I don't have a full report from our tugs just yet. They are just starting to get things going. So hang tight. I am keeping a watchful ear out for reports over the radio on what speed we're moving at. As a reminder, folks, we are doing this entire endeavor because we have just completed a 78-day stint at dry dock number 3 at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. That is our 4th time in that dry dock. So we are very fortunate that we were able to return there. The ship was first brought there in December 1942, not too long after we were launched on December 7th. We had our final fitting out there for the underwater parts of the ship. So she got her propellers and her rudders put on that dry docking. She returned there later in 1943 just to have a little bit of extra work on the underside done. Once they got the engines going, they saw they needed extra work. And then we were back there once again in 1968. So that way the ship could get fitted out to go to Vietnam. That's when we got that antenna you can see on the bow. From this angle, it mostly just looks straight up and down. We like to call it the Christmas tree antenna. It's formally called a disco and cage antenna. It's actually 2 antennas, but it was put on there in 1968 as the ship gets ready for Vietnam. More communication equipment. Actually, part of it ends up being part of our system for like ship-to-ship communication. Not quite internet, but almost. For creating sort of databases and information. Someone has inquired about our epoxy caulk. I suspect you tuned into our last cruise and you know that I have a strong fondness for talking about it. The epoxy, the sealant that we use on the hull is a 2-part cold bonded polysulfide sealant. I have a particular fondness for it because saying 2-part cold bonded polysulfide sealant is just very enjoyable. But all it is a sealant that goes into the seams, the riveted seams of the hull. It's not something that was there originally. It was something that seems to have been added in the 1980s. Fortunately, we had some of the original ship's records to be able to track it down. If there is anything about the project that you want to ask, I am trying to keep an eye on the live chat, so send them there. You might have to ask them more than once for me to get to them, but I'm doing my best. We do not have a reopening date for the museum. We will be open by July 3rd. We will figure it out. I'm hopeful we'll get open a little bit earlier than that, but July 3rd, certainly. We will definitely be open June 29th for fireworks, but just the main deck, as we usually do. Just sort of the outside exterior of the ship. We're still working on getting the inside of the ship put back together. We had to move a lot of things to make sure they didn't tip over on the cruise, in cases when the tugboats bump us or when we went down on the blocks, things didn't tip over. So some of the more exciting things in our collection, the models especially, we want to make sure the models didn't tip. They're very fragile. So we got to put all that stuff back, as well as important stuff like the ship's silver that got taken off of the ship just to keep it safe while we were gone. But yeah, we absolutely are going to be open by July 3rd, so we can be open for July. We take 4th of July pretty seriously around here, as you might imagine, especially in Philadelphia, which is functionally where we are. That's Philadelphia on the left side of the screen here, off our port side. 4th of July is founded right here in Philly, so of course we're going to take it pretty seriously. And on a battleship, why not? With that, fun fact for you, one summer on the battleship in, I'd say like the mid-1980s, they actually put on a production of 1776, the musical, on board the ship, which I think is fun. So we take 4th of July pretty seriously around here. Looks like our spirit vote is not so far away, and glad that some of you guys are tuning in. Hello, folks out on the water joining us. For those of you who haven't been tuned in for too long, we will be having some special effects throughout the day. We have so far done 1 gunshot. We fired one of our saluting guns. We did the starboard side. Both port and starboard functional. I'm not sure if we're going to switch between them throughout the day. That is the final decision of our gun crew. And our gun crew today is being operated by Ken Kirsch. He served on the ship during the Vietnam War, so it's very nice to have one of our crew members back aboard. I don't former captains on board. when he was our captain, he was Captain Katz, but he's Admiral Katz now. So it was great to have him and his wife on board to join us. He comes to visit us fairly regularly. We only have 2 living captains of the ship left, so it's always wonderful when they come to visit us. Captain Tucker is our other. He lives in Arizona and has been unable to visit us. We do, interestingly, have 2 of our admirals left aboard, or left alive. So that's Admiral Reason and Admiral Kahune. Admiral Reason, our ship's museum crew, did go visit not too long ago. We have acquired some of his effects. We display our admiral's cabin as if he was the one that was living there. He's the last admiral that lived in there. Partially because we thought he was the only admiral who lived in that cabin. The rest of our admirals would have lived in a separate cabin elsewhere, except we've recently found out that Admiral Kahune lived in there as well. He is the Navy's first native Hawaiian admiral. He lives in Hawaii still, so he hasn't visited us lately. But we are glad to know that he is still alive and doing well. He seems to visit Missouri a lot. That's our sister in Hawaii. So right now we are passing the airport. And you can see downtown Philly there. We are probably moving, I'd say, at about 3 knots. Our goal today is going to be to build up to 6.5. We're taking it slow. We're keeping a watchful eye on those around us. Hitting that speed record is nice, but not as important as doing the whole thing safely. For those of you who hadn't heard, yep, we're doing the whole thing by tugboat. We're not running the ship's engines. We're not allowed to do that. So all by tug. On the left-hand side of the screen, sort of off our port bow, you can start to see the Navy Yard. There is a sort of rectangular crane there. That is Aker, I think is how you say the name of their company. Aker. So they were 2 companies down from where our dry dock was. We're going to get fairly close to our dry dock today. We're going to see if we can point it out when we pass it. You can, of course, also start to see the stadiums there for some sense of geography. That is the link. That's where the Eagles play. Our Bofors do fire. We will not be firing them today. They're on the stern. They're in kind of a weird spot. And to be honest, they're kind of finicky to fire. So we've been firing just the saluting gun. Our 5-inch guns are able to be fired. I don't believe they're on the schedule for today, though, just because they do pack a pretty serious punch.
They're on the same size as the tugs.
And they're on the same size as the tugs. That was just brought up. That's a good point. We would like to protect our tugboats. We love our McAllister tugs, so we want to make sure that we don't damage them in the process. We've had some questions about our zinc anodes. So the ship itself has a cathodic protection system that was originally a bunch of zinc blocks stuck to the side of the ship. The idea is that they will dissolve inside of the ship if we're having some sort of galvanic corrosion. We replaced them while we were in dry dock with aluminum anodes. Aluminum just makes more sense for our freshwater environment. Zinc was put on for a saltwater environment. The Delaware isn't. It's slightly brackish, but not truly salt. So we switched to aluminum. So, of course, that means we have 1,200 zinc anodes now that we need to get rid of. Some of them, of course, are going into the museum's collection, but we are selling the majority of them. We started selling some of them while we were in dry dock. We sold 2 tons, 3 tons? 300, 2 tons of zinc anodes while we were in dry dock, but we still have like 900 left to sell. So don't you worry if you don't have your zinc anode yet. We will have plenty for sale. For a while, we're just going to sell them in our in-person store. They will end up in our online store eventually. To be honest, our online store is a bit inundated right now, and trying to send zinc anodes out is not easy. I'll warn you, they probably won't be cheap because mailing them is difficult. They weigh 23 pounds. They tend to break cardboard boxes. So some museum ships have experimented with, putting fireworks in their gun barrels and things like that. And honestly, it looks kind of lackluster most of the time. So we don't like faking it like that. It just doesn't look great. Some ships use propane instead of using gunpowder. That works too, but again, we don't want to do that out of the guns that are too close to our tugboats. And from a safety standpoint, just isn't gonna fly for us. So we do not fire the 16-inch guns. We won't be doing the 5-inch today, but just some of the saluting guns, just to keep everybody safe. That's more important. Where is Ryan present? Ryan is actually up here with me on the '08 bridge. He's going to tune in for our live chat soon. We've been here for 6 hours already today. He's going to take a minute, drink some water, eat some lunch, and he'll be with our chat here soon enough. I don't have an ETA on when we're going to go underneath the Walt Whitman. We're expected to arrive in Camden at 1:24.
Officially, fastest battleship in 2024. Stuck in Texas.
So if you can hear that on the radio, that is our intrepid CEO informing us that we have hit 6.1 knots. Take that, Texas. Texas hit 6 knots. And I'm not going to lie, I am texting our friends at Texas as I speak to inform them that we just hit 6.1 knots. Now, this ship holds the speed record already back from 1968. She hits 35.2 knots. We are the world's fastest battleship, regardless of what anybody wants to say about it. It's said and done. However, of 2024, Texas had beat us ever so slightly, though honestly, we hadn't really been keeping track. Both Texas and New Jersey have moved a few times this year. So we found out what their final top speed was. They hit 6 knots. Now we're at 6.1. So we did get the speed record so far. However, they still have another move ahead of them when they move to their final pier, though I suspect that won't be until 2025, maybe. They're not expected to reopen until 2026. So check out Battleship New Jersey, check out Battleship New Jersey on Facebook, but check out Battleship Texas on Facebook or YouTube to get their details on their project. They just came out of a roughly year-long dry dock project. So Kid hit 14 knots. We're never going to hit Kid speed. We don't have that kind of distance. Our ship is also significantly heavier. Kid is getting dry docked in Houma, Louisiana. She's normally in Baton Rouge, so she had a long tow. But she hasn't gotten out of the water yet. I haven't seen a date yet for when she is. Check out Kid on YouTube for details on that. Looks like we've got a pretty international audience joining us. Somebody brought up a good point. If you have visited us before, let us know. If not, let us know where you're tuning in from. It'd be really cool to see where everybody's from. No, we do not have any plans for a flyover today. We've planned a bit of a party, but to be honest, we weren't sure when we were going to move until fairly recently. So not really enough time to plan a flyover. These things are a little finicky. They happen when they happen. If additional work needed to be done in the dry dock, which it was. We are about a week and a half later than our original planned date. Then that could have delayed us. Weather could have delayed us. So no flyovers or things like that for this one. So right now we've got about 90 minutes until our expected arrival back home in Camden. As a reminder, we were in Paulsboro for the last roughly a week. We left the dry dock last Friday. Now, right now we are passing Fort Mifflin. If anybody at Fort Mifflin is listening, we can see you. They've got a decent-sized crowd standing up on their hill there. So hello, Fort Mifflin. We're going to try and show you guys some of the things as we pass them. We have a bit of a narrow window here, literally a window that we are between. We are filming from up here on the 08 today. This is technically our primary con position, which makes it a great place to be up on today. But it does have slight limitations as far as filming because it's got all these stanchions that hold up our awning. However, the awning is the top reason that we are here because it is 95 degrees outside. It is hot today. Because it is so hot, we are a little bit hiding underneath our awning just to give us some shade. We're keeping our people and our camera from overheating. We do have a news helicopter flying around us. I think there might be more than one. If you are tuning in in both places, both with the news and here. Make sure you let us know where you're watching on the news. The ship is somewhat handicap accessible while we are in Camden. Our ladderways are not. You're pretty much stuck to the main deck if you can't climb up and down the stairs by yourself. But our main deck, now that it has been reteaked, is fairly wheelchair accessible. You can get into the wardroom as well. And I have seen many of folks get all over this ship. Okay, guys, confirm you can hear me now. Looks like we've had a weird audio blip. I suspect it got hot. But we shall see. I will warn you guys, we might have slightly lower quality audio for a little while we figure that one out. Oh, well, the back. Yes. Looks like we just had a dead battery. We're gonna let that charge for a couple of minutes. Should be pretty easy. So yes, we're talking a little bit about our projects. In addition to painting the hull, we checked those 160 through-hole openings. We had about a 10% failure rate on our through-hole openings. That's okay. It means that we got the chance to finally fix them. They had failed inside the ship. They had been leaking inside the ship except for one that we found out about 15 years ago. So we were able to repair that nice. Other work that got done, we did a bunch of ultrasonic shots of the ship. So all of that is just confirming how thick the hull is. Most reports on that were pretty good. We had one small area that was not great. So we were able to check that and repair that work. We put additional plates on it. Those additional plates mean that the hull is now a half inch thick in that deteriorated area, so back to its original thickness. No major concerns long term there, though that is one of the spots that we've been inspecting. Like I said before, we've been doing tank inspections, and it's a tankless job. We have been sent. Thank you, Ryan, for your commentary on that one. It involves climbing into some of the hottest, most miserable parts of the ship and just confirming that there is no water intrusion. We did double check all of our water alarms this morning just to confirm that there is, that our alarm panels do work. We tested them. There are essentially floats in the more precarious parts of the ship. So we confirmed that those do work. But we like to do visual inspections in our high concern spots, so where the propeller shafts are, things like that. So now that we're doing those inspections throughout the course of the cruise, which we've got roughly 90 minutes left of. We're going to try and show you some things around us as we move around. Fortunately, dead ahead of us right now is the Philadelphia Navy Yard. So you can see, the stadium, right? That's the sort of larger building over there. And just to the right of that, there is a tan boxy building. So we are sort of in general area was where our dry dock was. When we pass it, we'll see if we can pan over, get a decent view of it. But right now, our best view of it is from right dead off our bow. We're taking a pretty wide berth around. There's a sandbar off our starboard side, so we're giving lots of space. Now, one of the things that you can see on camera right now, it's just starting to come into view on the right-hand side. I'm coming off our starboard bow, is the USS John Kennedy. Honestly, we didn't know for certain whether Kennedy would still be here by the time we came home, but she is fortunately still with us. She is slated to go to the scrapyard soon. There was some talk that she would go while we were in the dry dock. Obviously, that has not happened. There have been some delays. Took Kennedy's best interest. Now she gets to sit here and be around for a little while longer. So that's the radio call telling us roughly where we are. In case anyone hadn't noticed, we are about to pass the dry dock. We've got a few minutes moving at this speed before we get there. And we are going to fire the starboard side gun when we get there. So expect another loud boom. For those of you who missed that when we departed the pier, it is quite loud. Our gun crew today is just firing the saluting gun. It's a 40 millimeter blank. We're not firing real rounds. We're not supposed to fire real rounds with a saluting gun anyway. It's supposed to just be a loud bang. So that's exactly what we're doing today. And our gun crew today is being run by Ken Kirsch, who served on the ship in the Vietnam War.
He was first assigned to the ship when she was in that equipment, right?
Right. Yes, we go.
No.
No microphones.
Ken Kirsch was first assigned to the ship in 1968 when she was still here in dry dock number 3. He remembers being in the machine shop when the ship got up to her max speed of 35.2 knots. That would be in September of 1968, just after leaving the shipyard here. Excuse me. Left side here, you can see, I think there's another one behind her. I can't read the name through the trees. I believe these vessels are under construction for the maritime academies. That was dry dock number 5. It is currently flooded and being used as a pier. I don't believe it operates as a dry dock anymore. Right next to dry dock number 5, you can see dry dock number 4. That is just forward of this blue building, this baby blue building that you can see. As we get abreast to it, we should be able to tell whether it's flooded or not. These two dry docks are a little bit shallower, a little bit wider and longer than the one that New Jersey was in. These are capable of taking super carriers. So it is where a lot of the SLEP conversion, service life extension program work, was done on aircraft carriers like Kennedy and Kitty Hawk back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. All right, so yeah, it looks like dry dock number 4 is dry. There was the gunshot. I believe they're building new construction in that dry dock. They're not using it as a dry dock for repairs. They're using it to build new construction. In front of the dry dock, you can see the blue sort of pointed towards the battleship, dark blue at the water level. That is the caisson for dry dock number 5. And you can see that the caisson for dry dock number 4 is in place, holding out the water. Next to dry dock 4, in the direction that we're headed, you can see a couple of low white Quonset hut type buildings. Directly on the other side of those, as we start to get around, are the slipways where New Jersey and Wisconsin were launched from, and Washington. So the closer slipway that we go past is the one that Wisconsin was built at. The further one is the one that New Jersey and before her Washington and after her Illinois were being built on. The New Jersey slipway end is now covered by this stand of trees that you can see. And depending on how much you've got your screens zoomed in, you might be able to see that there are a bunch of cars parked in the slipways. That is correct. The slipways are still there. They're not used anymore. The overhead gantry system has been destroyed. They are now used as parking lots.
We did do a video from there, so if you want to see that parking lot up close, check the channel for previous videos.
Yeah, so this area between the Quonset hut and the stand of trees is the base of the slipway where Wisconsin was built. Trees is the base of the slipway where New Jersey was built. Just past that, you can see pier number 6. That's the pier where the Charles Gilliland was docked when New Jersey came into dry dock. It is vacant right now, and that pier is just before dry dock number 3. So as we get around that pier, we'll be able to see into dry dock number 3, and it looks like the caisson for 3 is in place, and the dry dock is dry. They're probably pulling all the keel blocks out as Philadelphia Ship Repair shuts down. You can see that they rolled that 1941 crane all the way to the end of its tracks, and they're flying an American flag from the gaff at the end of it. You can also see one of its sister cranes painted baby blue and yellow on pier number 5, just on the other side of the drive. I'm not sure how many salutes we're going to be firing today, but those are the bangs that you're hearing in the background.
And we're going to do one more.
If you are watching this on smell-o-vision, that saltpeter smell you smell is the burned powder. The Jetsons promised me we'd have smell-o-vision by now. So now we are getting parallel with dry dock number 3. We're starting to round pier 6. Next to pier 6 is pier 5. That is a high-speed vessel number 2. Her name is Choctaw County. She's a military Sea Lift Command vessel. She is tied up there on the other side of that baby blue crane. And then just past that, you can see the aircraft carrier Kennedy, pier 4. The Battleship New Jersey is launched from right over there at the slipway. She's brought right over here. Well, now it's being blocked by the stanchion, but the dry dock number 3. And then after her propellers and rudders are brought on, she's taken over to dry dock number 4. That is the one that had the big hammerhead crane on it for fitting out ships whose hulls were completed. And that's where our rotating machinery like fire control directors, secondary battery, and of course the main battery turrets. That crane was nominally rated for about 350 tons. However, they can usually do about 50% more than that. So they lowered our turrets into place in sections that weighed as much as 550 tons each. They had test lifted to make sure this works, but measuring the weight of the turrets wasn't as simple as putting them on a scale. What they did was they measured the weight of all the equipment going into the turret assemblies. So the gentleman whose job it was to map that out, I can't remember his name, I believe he was a lieutenant commander at the time. He stood in the bottom of the turret well as the crane lifted the turret overhead, because he figured that if something went wrong, that way he would avoid a court-martial. If it was me, I would have said that's how confident I was in my work. But I'm not that good at math, so I'm confident about things I shouldn't be confident about sometimes. We are coming up on the stern of the aircraft carrier Kennedy right now. American aircraft carriers have an opening at the back of the ship at the not the flight deck level, at the hangar deck level, which is their main deck level. The flight deck's actually the O3 level. And that is for, if they need to do work on jet engines, they can pull them out of the aircraft, bring them back there to that opening at the fantail, and basically run the jet engines off of the back of the ship as a test. That way they're not burning all the other aircraft in the hangar when they do those tests. So you're able to see the ship where some of her defensive armament would have been. Kennedy would have been armed with phalanx, Gatling guns, and Sea Sparrow missiles, none of which are left on board. New Jersey, of course, had 4 phalanx guns on herself. They wanted to install...
Hey Ryan, this is Rachel. Can I come with? Okay, thank you.
Next time she goes between the tank inspection.
Oh.
Her other defensive armament, the Sea Sparrow missiles, the Navy looked at installing on Iowa-class battleships. They would have been roughly in the position of our saluting guns now, just aft of turret number 2. However, the overpressure from the 16-inch guns firing would have destroyed the missiles. So they never found a way to install those, and New Jersey never had either a medium or a long-range air defense indigenous to the ship in her 1980s configuration. That's okay, because she was always designed to be operating as part... She was always designed to be operating as part of a task group.
I just fired off a second. Oh, this is the best view of Kennedy I've ever had.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
The Philadelphia Navy Yard is, of course, built on what used to be League Island. Of course, League Island then got filled in with dredge spoils, and it's now just a peninsula that is connected to the rest of mainland Philadelphia. Almost got turned into an island again. In the 19-teens, they were planning on making dry dock number 3 a double-ended dry dock. It would go all the way through League Island, segmenting the southern half of it, the downriver half of it, and turn it back into a island, but then also have a really long dry dock in it that could be segmented in the middle so that you could sail ships into it from either the reserve basin inside between League Island and Philadelphia and the Delaware River here on the outside. So we are more or less past the Navy Yard now and continuing to make our way down the channel. New Jersey is on the right-hand side of the screen, the state of New Jersey. The state of Pennsylvania is on the left-hand side of the screen, and the Delaware River is the blue stuff in between. Just a recap, we're doing about 6 knots downriver right now. We have the wind blowing from more or less astern of us. But it seems like, it looks like the tide is going out, which confuses me because we're supposed to get to the pier at high tide. Maybe it's just how fast we're going that's causing that effect. Anything on the screen?
We're flying a series of flags. We've got the big American ensign, that's the obvious one. The big yellow flag is our Wetsu flag. Ryan, you want to tell us about the Wetsu flag?
The Wetsu flag is an homage to Admiral Tucker's motto when he was in command of New Jersey as the ship's 19th and final commanding officer. He was a captain at that time. And his motto throughout his various commands was Wetsu, we eat this stuff up. That was because he was in charge of a ship with 1,600 people on board. He figured that he had somebody with the expertise to solve any problem he was going to run into. So his motto was, we eat this stuff up. It might stink to do this work, but we're able to do it ourselves. And that seemed to be a motto that the crew really latched onto. The ship did a lot of onboard repairs with her own crew while he was in command. They stenciled Wetsu all over the ship. And it helps us date a lot of the sailor art on board because we know that that dates from his time in command, which was 89, 90, and then early 91 at decommissioning. The Wetsu flag is the original flag the crew made during his time on board. We have 1 or 2 pictures of it flying or hung around 1990 at the end of the ship's career. It is not perfectly mirrored on both sides. It's attempted to be mirrored, but it's not perfect, which seems to indicate that it was made on board the ship, probably in the sail locker. It's a nice light nylon material, which is good because it's huge. It's something like 20 by 30 off the top of my head. And we still have it because when the crew was decommissioning the ship, they were convinced that she was going to be used again in the future. So they left everything important on board. There were documents on desks that said where to find stuff for different divisions. We've been able to trace some of this documentation down and then find some of the equipment that it's referencing. There was just stuff left all over the ship for future use. Some of that included the ship's Wetsu flag, which we found after some 21 years of being a museum, like within the last 12 months, in a trash bag in one of the uptake spaces. Ahead of this project, we were starting to clean stuff off of the ship. So we went into this uptake space, which maintenance had used to store a bunch of their stuff. And we're starting to throw away stuff that had expired, stuff that was no longer usable. And as we were going through it, anything that gets thrown off on the ship has to go through the curator's office just to make sure it's not an artifact. And so they pulled this trash bag. Fortunately, it was something already in a trash bag. It could just go right in the dumpster. And it passes through my office. We open it up, and holy cow, it is the original flag. Libby recognized it immediately before we'd even unfolded it from some of the pictures of the ship. And so we were able to tell what it was and then add it to the museum's collection. It is an accessioned artifact now in the collection. Typically, artifacts you want to preserve. You don't want to use them consumptively. Not a manual, a report that's going to be part historic documentation of the work that we've done and part lessons learned. They said they were going to fire. There it is. So, critically, this report is going to be printed out and left in several places around the ship, including in an exhibit case and on my desk if and when I leave the museum. The issue is, if we save it on a thumb drive or in the cloud or wherever, we don't know that that is going to be the same way that we save files and access files 30 years from now when we dry dock the ship again. A ton of the original documentation from the museum is saved on 4.5-inch floppy drives. We don't have any computers that read floppy drives anymore. The museum doesn't have a single one that can do it. We can buy the things and we can look at that documentation if we really want to. But it makes us think, hey, 30 years from now, when our successors planning this project, where are they going to find the documentation that they need? We had to search all over the place. We have a lot of the original Navy documents, but not all of them. And will other people be able to find what we found and then put back? So we're going to write up a full report. It's going to have copies of things like the blocking plans, critical resources that we found, other information like that. Most importantly, it'll have lessons learned and some of the things that we found in dry dock that we didn't know about going into dry dock, so it can potentially be planned for the scope of work next time, such as all the riveted seams. The Navy thought that those were leaking in the 90s, so they covered it all with caulk. We did not know they covered it with caulk, and we couldn't find out why they were covered with caulk until about a month into our 2-month project. At that time, it was too late to try and find out where there might have been leaks. So that's something that my successor's successor is going to have to plan in the scope of work next time. Rather than covering the hull with 3 linear miles of caulk, we will be able to plan for a way to fix that if, in fact, that is where the leak that the Navy thought they were trying to address was coming from.
We were fortunate enough to figure out exactly what kind of material the caulk had previously been, which means that we got to put back on the 2-part cold bonded polysulfide sealant. I'm going to miss saying 2-part cold bonded polysulfide sealant.
Nobody said you have to stop.
Well, I will definitely not stop. Somebody has inquired, there have been several comments in the section here about, oh, well, you can get stuff off of those old devices. You absolutely can. You can get stuff off of old floppy disks and things like that. But to be honest, it causes problems. As a museum, we do our best to prevent things from ending up on antiquated technology that we can't use, but that piece of paper is going to last a long time. It's going to last a lot longer than whatever floppy disk we put it on. So thus, we've got a preference for paper for things like this. Some things it doesn't work like that, but when in doubt, a paper copy is a good idea.
Yeah, the rough rule of thumb is the older the technology, the longer it will likely last. But nothing lasts forever. So we don't quite know how long a flash drive or a removable hard drive will last. In the 6 years I've been here, several of the ones I've used have burned out. CDs are known to last about a decade before they start to delaminate and are no good anymore. VHSs will last 15 or 20 years before the film starts to break down. So nothing is going to last forever, except the ship's analog fire control computers. As long as those stay oiled, they'll keep running forever. The older your technology is, the more likely it is to keep working.
What's happening in Camden right now?
No idea.
I can tell you that there is a bit of a party happening in Camden. Those of you who are perhaps tuning in from Camden might be able to share more in the comments. I hear we've got a band. I think they're pretty themed. There is a pretty good sized crowd. I've seen pictures. They got food. So if you're not sure where you want to watch us, you still have time to get to Camden. We are starting to make the approach to make the turn. I can see the Walt Whitman Bridge that we're going to be going under eventually. We're not there yet. We've still got a little over an hour until we're expected to arrive in Camden. I'd say we're just about 15 minutes, 20 minutes away, I guess. Last I heard, we're traveling 6 knots. There is not a gun by the way.
How many of those are they going to do?
I think they're letting everybody do it. So on this trip, we did not paint the sides. If you're watching the news as well, you can see that. That's above the water. We didn't need to do it in dry dock. We didn't do any work in dry dock that we can do at home. So we will be painting the above water hull of the ship sooner rather than later. We don't have a date yet of when we're going to start, but it will be soon. We've already got plans. We've got our contractor all set up. We just got to find a date when things work out for everybody. The reality is the tugboat's pushing us to scuff it up. So we didn't want to do it before this. And it's something that we've done as a museum several times. We generally do it every 5 years or so. We are overdue for that because of this project. We waited, but it'll get done as soon as we get the chance. We didn't really paint the superstructure at all while we were here in dry dock either. The deck got some work, so therefore some of the areas near where they're working on the deck got painted, the verticals and things like that. We are painting the superstructure as we do the deck. Lots of gunfire today. The deck project has been a roughly 5-year project so far. We are just about to complete the main deck. It'll be done before we reopen, really. If you would like to help paint, we are always looking for volunteers. So go to battleshipnewjersey.org. It's in the description of this video. Find anywhere on there that has somebody's contact information, or email volunteers@battleshipnewjersey.org or education@battleshipnewjersey.org. We'll give you all the information you need to volunteer. Volunteers do paint. If you want to paint, you can paint. But our volunteers do other things as well. If you want to be a docent and talk to guests, if you want to remove paint, you can do that too. If you want to polish brass, if you want to work with our radios, if you've got specialized skills like you're a welder or a plumber or whatever, we probably need your specialized skills. If not, we always need people to chip more paint. We can teach you how to do that. So sign up to be a volunteer if you can. If you are not local, find your local museum ship. I'm sure they need your help. There are 100 or so museum ships in the United States alone. There's probably one not that far from you, even if you can only come for a weekend. Definitely worth giving it a try. Most of our volunteers come 1 day a week. There's no commitments. Come when you can. And it's a lot of fun. We've got some of our volunteers on board. Some of our volunteers are on one of the tugboats that's with us as well. I'm not sure how they snuck on board a tugboat, but I'm glad they got the chance to do it. So I think one of them actually knows the tugboat captain. That's how that worked out. So for those of you asking to fire the guns, that's what that loud sound is. We keep firing the guns. We are not firing the big 16-inch gun. It's just a saluting gun. But we have been firing it, it seems like, constantly for the last, 30 minutes. I'm not sure what the schedule looks like today, but it seems to be constant. So living in dry dock would be really cool. It's nice to be able to see that. It is not in the best interest of the ship. Even if the ship was sitting in that dry dock while it was completely flooded, that would be fabulously expensive. So that's not ideal for us. Other ships are going to use that dry dock, so it's just not practical for us. But keeping the ship out on dry land is not practical. It's not in the best interest of the ship. She starts to pancake over time. Fortunately, we were only out of the water for 78 days. That wasn't an issue for us while we were here. But the steel starts to bend. It does. She's not meant to be out of the water. She needs to be supported. So thus, keeping ships out of the water long-term has its problems. Some museum ships have chosen to go that route. You'll mostly see it with submarines. Submarines' hulls can handle that a lot better because they're round. Yeah, because they're round. So it works better for them than it does for us. They're also designed to handle immense amounts of pressure, so I feel like they do better out on land than the surface ships do. You will occasionally find surface ships on land, like USS Stewart in Galveston. She is much smaller. She's also in the mud, so she is supported on all sides. It means they have difficulty accessing the underwater hull of the ship. So you're still not actually accessing the underwater part to do the work that you need to do. And you're getting all of that, as the mud gets wet, you're still getting corrosion. So that's not necessarily better. In their case, it's in their best interest because they're in a place that gets a lot of hurricanes. And objective number one, don't let the weather take your boat away from you. Our concerns weather-wise are rain degrading the inside of the ship as it works its way through doorways and things like that. Their concern is hurricanes. We do occasionally get hurricanes on our part of the world here on the Delaware River near Philadelphia, but they're pretty mild. The ship has weathered quite a few of them here and never honestly noticed. So not a big concern for us. So no, being on land is not in our best interest. Looks really cool, not best for the ship. We do not have a reopening date for the museum yet. We will be open by July 3rd, no matter what. We might reopen slightly before that. We'll see. Depends. We have a long shopping list of things to take care of before we can return. So we need to put the museum back together, essentially. We tucked away a lot of the more vulnerable items to make sure that nothing tipped over when we got bumped by a tugboat or when we went down the blocks, or in case we suddenly did decide to move really fast while underway. It's been really smooth sailing. It's really hard to tell we're even moving. Last I heard, she's moving at 6.1 knots, but it's moving slow. But we still moved a bunch of the items away, which means that we've got to put all that stuff back before we can reopen. We also tucked a bunch of things away because of the ballasting efforts. We just had a bunch of people in weird parts of the ship. So we moved things. An entire exhibit basically got torn apart so we could get through there. So we got to put all that back together. We haven't mopped the floors in 90 days, and they are pretty scary. So our cleaning crew has their work cut out for them. That's Mike and Mickey. We love them so much. And Nettie, and I have a feeling they're going to bring the whole crew with them because they've got a lot of work to do. We've done our best to try and keep on top of it, but we are looking forward to having our full crew back on board to help with that. But we've also got to do just the bare bones basics. We need the gangway again. We need electrical power coming from shore. We're currently getting it from a generator, which means we have limited power. We can do what we need to do. We can power pumps if we need to. We've got lights, but we need to go back to full power before we can reopen. That'll also turn, make sure all of our lights are on so we can keep everybody safe. We need water again for basic things like bathrooms. I'd really like to get our heads back up and running. That'd be nice. It's been a long time since we've had running heads on board. About 90 days now. We'll also then, that means, get air conditioning back. I am looking forward to nothing more than getting air conditioning back on the ship soon. Very soon. So that'll be back so we can get people on board and it will be vaguely comfortable. If you are not from around here, you might not know that it is currently 90 degrees Fahrenheit here. It is hot. Someone has asked if we're going to make videos about getting ready to reopen. And folks, we make videos 5 nights a week coming out at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We've been doing that for 4.5 years. We've got like 2,000 episodes. So yeah, we're going to make a video about that because we've made a video about everything. My favorite sort of pedantic video topic was how many curators does it take to change a light bulb? It's 18 minutes long, and it does have my favorite comment and response. I don't know how your pandemic's going, but I just watched an 18-minute video of a man changing a light bulb, and it was awesome. So we've covered a lot of nitty-gritty. Chairs was fun. We've done like 5 videos on chairs. We visited the factory that makes some of our chairs. We've talked about benches. We've talked about stools. We've talked about the floor, the deck, in like 6 different videos. Some of it about replacing the deck, some of it about tile, some of it about the lack of tile. We've covered it all. Don't you worry, we will still cover it. We are always looking for video suggestions. On Friday, we're going to talk about the alarms and tell us that there is water on the ship. Someone has asked, and I feel compelled to answer here, if I aspire to a career in video production. Congratulations, I've won. That is what I do. That is my job here. I'm helping Ryan out with our live stream today, but that is mostly what I do here.
Get up on one of the chairs.
Somebody's right. The Emiko chairs are fabulously expensive, but they are so great. The thing I love most about Emiko chairs, so they're made out of aluminum. So the chairs are made out of aluminum, right? So the Emiko, the company makes these chairs, goes to the Navy and says, "Hey, we've got these chairs. We think these are the perfect chairs for the Navy." The aluminum, or the Navy says, "Well, we don't really like aluminum. It's flammable. They bend easily. You know, we need stuff that can handle getting hit by a German torpedo." And Emiko said, "Oh, don't you worry. Our chairs are tough. They take these aluminum chairs and they dip them in liquid sodium, and then they bake them in an oven at 350 degrees for like 8 hours, basically cookies, and it toughens up the aluminum. So much so that to prove that they were tough, the guy from Emeco threw it out an 8-story window and it bounced and did not break, which is why the Navy proceeded to buy something like 1 million of them. Those chairs are still in existence. They've got a 120-year warranty on them, so they're still around. We still have some on board. But they keep putting the old ones on new ships because they're still good.
I'm going to find the max.
Okay.
Want anything on it?
Yeah. Yes. So we're taking a brief pause here from our live stream so we can reorganize some of our stuff. But we're going to send. We are going to send Brian up to the top of the ship because we're going to go underneath the bridge here in just a minute, and he's going to watch. We have a GoPro on him. We can't bring our live stream camera up there. It doesn't work. It requires climbing a 30-foot vertical exterior ladder. Brian's going to have to wear a harness to do it. So expect to see the footage from that on this channel next week sometime. It's going to be very cool. We got a GoPro with him. We do have drones up in the air. Our drone cam is expected to start around 1 o'clock. So we'll be underneath the bridge by then. But the drone footage from what they've got right now will also end up on our channel sooner rather than later. Now, as we're about to go underneath the Walt Whitman Bridge, I have a feeling we are definitely slowing here. I don't know if we're going to come to a full stop, but we have to wait to get clearance to go underneath the bridge. They are going to stop traffic. They are stopping traffic less so because they're concerned that we're going to hit the bridge, but because they're concerned that people on the bridge are going to stop, which I can tell you I'm already seeing. There is a serious amount of traffic on that bridge right now. People are slowing as they stop to see us go by. And that's cool, but also a safety hazard. So they are going to stop traffic before we get underneath it, so that way nobody gets too excited. Last time we did have some bridge workers underneath the bridge who were there while we passed under. It was honestly the scariest part of the trip because we didn't know they were there. We just heard people yelling, which made me think we were going to hit the bridge. We have about 15 feet of clearance. We know that. We knew that going in. It still was not super comforting. We sent Ryan up there so we'll get some good pictures of just how close we really are. But it's about 15 feet according to our measurements. We are part of the reason for stopping traffic as well, though, is to make sure that the bridge is at its maximum height with cars sitting on it. It does slightly sag. Not all that much, but just enough. So that gives us just a little bit of extra clearance under there as well. We're being very careful. We've had some questions about whether or not Tug Jupiter is with us. Jupiter is not with us today, unfortunately. She has been on a campaign the last 6 months and beyond, really, to get her engines back in working order so that way she could sail along with us for this cruise today. Jupiter was one of the ships that was there when we were launched December 7th, 1942. She helped put us into dry dock number 3 for the very first time 82 years ago. So we were very much looking forward to having Jupiter with us. Unfortunately, while her engine got all fixed and repaired, she's river-worthy. She got stuck in some paperwork, so she's not with us today. However, I expect to see her on the pier, Penn's Landing, right over by Olympia and Vicuna when we arrive. So we'll see her nonetheless. I am seeing some serious traffic starting to back up on the bridge. So they are going to have to clear that before we can get underneath. I know that the folks who are in charge of that bridge are very concerned honestly, they're concerned about the cars getting distracted and watching us and hitting one another more so than us hitting the bridge. So they're going to make sure that that gets taken care of safely. That is the priority for this entire cruise. Let's make sure that everything is done safely for the bridge, for the ship, for everybody in between, for the other boats out on the water. Just making sure that everything gets done very safely. We are fortunate today. Our tugs are being done by Pallister. So they are in charge of them is Captain Joe Benton. He's been with us for all of our cruises. This is our fourth cruise, our final one for this dry dock project. So the last time we went underneath this bridge was in March. So it's been a few months, but we're excited to be going back. And getting underneath this bridge is one of our last big hurdles. As we've been planning this project for the last year, we've been thinking about it for the last decade, but the ladder's been a big push. We sort of had a list of, we call it scary points, things that we've been a little bit afraid of. Getting out of our pier, getting underneath the bridge, getting onto the blocks, getting off of the blocks in the dry dock. All of these things have been sort of our big milestones. So we're excited that this is one of our last big milestones. We get underneath the bridge, and then we just have to tie up to the pier. From there, we still have a lot of work. We got our work cut out for us. We've got to reconnect to the electrics and the water and sewage and internet and the gangways on board. So we do still have a lot of work ahead of us, but the last couple weeks are going to be one big push. So we will be reopened by July 3rd. So we are very much looking forward to returning to business as usual. Here on board, we've got a crew of about 80, mostly working as line handlers, and I can tell you that every single person is out on deck waiting to see us go underneath the bridge. I can confirm now that we have stopped traffic, so the only cars left on the bridge belong to the people who work on the bridge, who clear that traffic. Again, we're not concerned that we're going to hit the bridge. We've got 15 feet of clearance. Stopping traffic is about preventing car accidents from people looking at us, because honestly, that is an amazing view. Wow. Last time we did this, I was down on the 03, 04. So it was not quite as honestly stunning. Since I'm up a little bit higher, I have a little bit of a better view of just how close we get to this bridge, and wow, we're close. And we still have, since we're on the 08, the ship technically goes up to what we call the 013, really the 011. And we will have the footage from that camera on this channel in a few days. There is not currently traffic going into New Jersey or into Pennsylvania on the Wall Whitman. We have completely stopped traffic. We were moving at 6.1 knots earlier. I can't tell you right now what speed we're currently going. I am quite confident we have slowed down just to get underneath the bridge, because we've had some interesting delays. They want to make sure that we are crossing at the time they want us to cross. I do see people working underneath the bridge again. So they are going to get an excellent view. Some of those guys even came to take a dry dock tour, so we got the chance to talk with them. They showed us their footage. It's pretty cool. I really love just how many people have come out to see the ship, be invested in this project. I've seen we've got a couple thousand of you tuning in at home. But like, I can see people at the port on either side of us standing on top of the cranes to watch us go by, which is all very, very cool. That is the Walt Whitman Bridge that we are just about to go underneath here. Our camera gives a slightly skewed angle. Our bow hasn't even started going underneath it yet, never mind the top of the ship. So we still got a little ways to go, but we are fabulously close. 15 feet of clearance feels like a lot, except when your ship is as tall as ours. It still gets us very close. On our previous trip underneath the bridge, we had put a GoPro up there to watch. We didn't even feel comfortable putting a person up there. We put a camera up there, though, and we do have that footage, and it is very cool to see just how close we really get. So the bow has gone under. You can sort of watch that shade go past us. We have an awning over us, so we get limited pretty early on just how much bridge we can see. But we are just... That's the ship's horn. And the tallest part of the ship has officially made it underneath the bridge. We have cleared the bridge. That's the scary part, guys. We knew we had 15 feet of clearance, but we didn't know we had 15 feet of clearance until we knew we had 15 feet of clearance. So that is truly wonderful to see. Now all that we've got left... Oop. There we are. Sorry, guys. I watched you. Now all that we've got left is... getting up next to the pier. Looks like we're back to our rapid gunfire as well, which is, of course, much fun. Wouldn't be the Battleship without pneumatic gunfire on board. We're firing our saluting guns today. Now that we've officially cleared the bridge, looks like they're going to open traffic back up again, which, for those of you tuning in from sitting in traffic, we promise you we're doing this as quickly as we could. We do have a number of sailors on board today. Some of the crew of the New Jersey SSN 796 have joined us on board, including her captain, and Captain Hal here. So we're very excited to have them with us. They are it's the first time we've been able to truly announce New Jersey arriving on board this ship in a long time. We had one of our previous captains on board for the last cruise, Captain Katz, but especially nice to have So all the tugs are McAllister tugs. I'm not sure which McAllister tugs we have. I believe I saw Susan McAllister out there looking for us, but we have just crossed underneath the Wall Whitman, headed upriver. So if you're trying to find us on the app, that's where we are. We are very soon going to be passing the SS United States. When we get there, we'll pan over so you can see her. Right now, she's hidden behind the building. There's not much we can see. But we'll show it to you when they get there. We have interviewed Captain Katz. You see him on our channel every once in a while. So check for him. We are still expecting a roughly 1:25 arrival time back at our pier. And it sounds like Ryan has returned from the top of the ship. How was it?
So far today, I've been to the deepest tank in the ship, 7 feet below, or 7 stories below the main deck. I've now been at the highest point remaining on the ship as we went under the bridge. And let me tell you, it's a lot cooler at the top of the ship than it is at the bottom of the ship. It's probably about 110 degrees in the tanks right now. But there's a nice breeze up on top of the mast. Our air draft right now is, I believe, something like 138 feet from the top of the platform to the waterline. So that's about 14 stories up. Was this on time lapse or was it on full record?
For those of you asking, we have cameras all over the ship, so while you're getting a fairly stagnant view from where you are, don't you worry, we will have others that appear for future things as well. We like to do a recap after this is all over on our channel, so that'll probably go up on like maybe Tuesday, Monday. We'll see how it goes. We got a busy week ahead of us, but we'll definitely share that footage when we get it. We will also have a second live stream starting in about 20 minutes, maybe sooner, from our pier. They'll have connections in with our drones.
Once we get back to the pier and are waiting to debark, I'll head down next. I'm opening superstructure on the live stream right now.
One of the cool things about today has been seeing all the boats that have sailed alongside us, and everyone who has been able to has honked at us or done their part to say hello to us. It's been really cool to see all the neighbors. We are getting closer to the SS United States, but we're not there yet. There's still not much to see. She's still tucked behind this building. We have a very short window to see the SS United States. We will show you her when we get there, but we're just going to have to see it when we get to that pier. Total cost for dry dock was about $10 million. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State. The state of New Jersey gave us $5 million, which was really the thing that kickstarted this project, was them giving us that money. After that, we did also get $3 million of a guaranteed bond from Camden County. Again, we couldn't have done this project without them. And then the last $3 million came from viewers like you. So we did $1.5 million worth of dry dock tours. We saw over 6,000 people through the dry dock, which was huge. We never expected to see that many people. We never expected to raise that much money. So thank you to everyone who came out for that. And then we've had a whole lot of donations and support. The project is not done. We still have our work cut out for us. We're still fundraising to keep continuing to pay for these things. We also have a $3 million loan to pay back. So we appreciate all of your support for doing this. But that is how we pay for this. Now, the SS United States is starting to creep up on our port side here. In just a moment, we'll pivot so we can see them. The SS United States is a passenger liner. She is not open to the public as a museum. You can't really visit her. If you'd like to see her, I recommend go to the Philadelphia IKEA. That's usually your best view of her. She holds the speed record for fastest steamship to cross the Atlantic. She hit like 40 knots on speed trials once, is the legend I've heard. She has essentially the same engineering plant that we do, but her superstructure is made out of aluminum and she doesn't have armor, so therefore she can go very fast, but she doesn't have all that weight to slow her down like we do. They put the super fast engines in her so they could use her as a troop transport if they needed to. They never did. She instead is just continue to be used as a passenger liner. So she's sitting here at her dock for now. The news lately says that she needs to leave that dock by mid-September. Yeah. So she won't be here too much longer. Her final fate is still being decided. But she's very pretty. Go see her while you can. Like I said, go to the IKEA. It's your best place to view her. Go eat some Swedish meatballs and stare at a really pretty boat. Fortunately, here on the Delaware River, we have lots of really pretty boats. In addition to, of course, us, the gem in that crown, I think so. 47,000 tons of gorgeous, or I guess we're 45,000 tons of gorgeous.
Never finished dewatering.
Yeah. Either way, we're still the biggest and the coolest. But then
And still the fastest of 2024.
And the fastest 2024 and the fastest ever.
6.8 knots we got.
We got to 6.8?
Yep.
Wow. So for those of you who haven't been keeping track, Texas hit 6 knots on her cruise. So we wanted to beat Texas.
Travis, if you're watching.
I just texted him to tell them that we hit 6.8 knots. So take that, Texas. But anyway, pretty ships here on the Delaware. In addition to the United States and us, we've got the tug. She was around. She unfortunately couldn't get her paper today. She was there when we were launched in 1942. So we were hoping she'd join us. Sorry, Jupiter, but we'll see you back at Penn's Landing. Also, Penn's Landing, we've got Olympia, we've got Bakuna. They are both museum ships. Go see them. They also would love to see your support. So more of the story, come to Philly, come to Camden, come see all these great ships. They are wonderful. There's very few places in the world you can see this many historic ships all in one place that don't all like as part of one museum. It's pretty much like us, Battleship Cove, not all one museum, but like San Diego has quite a few in 2 separate museums. San Francisco's got a pretty heavy presence there, but Philly's a great place to see museum ships or other just really pretty ships like the United States.
I'm not great.
So now that we're just about passing the United States, we will return to our regularly scheduled programming of our bow instead.
Yes.
But we are still having an expected arrival time of 1:25 our pier. That's high tide. That's still a half hour from now. I suspect there might be a little bit of hurry up and wait. We do want to pull it at high tide. That's up to the discretion of our tugs. And our tugs today are on McAllister under the control of Captain Joe Benton. So we're not going to say goodbye to the SS United States. He was there a couple years back. So look for those. We are continuing to sail down the Delaware, though. We're getting checking my picture's going to take.
And so we're closing in on our pier now. We're planning on being there around 1:24. That is high tide. We want as much water under the ship as possible when we come back into our berth. So it is currently about 1:15. So we're looking at a little bit over a half hour before we're finished. Means if we're still doing about 6 or 7 knots, we're probably about a half a mile from home.
Somebody brought up a great point on the chat. Yeah, Kid hit, I think it was 14 knots. The chat says 11 knots. Either way, Kid definitely went faster than us. Kid is significantly smaller. Kid went significantly further. We're not surprised. Kid hit those really high speeds. We have such a short cruise. I don't think we could ever possibly get to that speed in this amount of time. Just not going to work for us. But we beat Texas, and that's important to us. As a recap, we've got some flags flying off our bow today. Those are friendship flags. They're just pretty. They're in a specific order, and that specific order doesn't spell anything. They're just there to be pretty. We call them friendship flags. There's some off the stern as well. They match. Again, they're pretty. Amidships, we have quite a few flags flying. The big one, of course, is our ensign, our American flag. If you're watching any of the streams on the news channels, you can't miss it. It's ginormous. We also have our big Wetsu flag up. That's the big yellow one. We recently found it. It was something that the crew made. We call it the Wetsu flag because it says Wetsu on it in giant letters. Captain Tucker made it, or that's Captain Tucker's catchphrase for the ship and for other places that he went. Wetsu stands for we eat this stuff. So that's the big yellow one. We also have a Navy flag, a state of New Jersey flag, and then we have signal flags flying off the side of the ship. The signal flags, one says, okay, it's Camden on the port side, NJBB on the starboard side. We also have the hotel flag flying, which says we're under tug, and with McAllister flags flying, because McAllister is our tugboat, and we're very happy to be working with them today.
NJBB, of course, was our radio call sign in the 1980s. It started out, I think it was NAPP throughout most of the ship's career, but she was decommissioned, call sign got taken by somebody else, I guess, and so in the 1980s, when she was being reactivated, they changed it to NJBB, New Jersey Battleship. All radio call signs start with the letter N for government vessels. So I believe it started out as N for Navy. So when you got that, it makes sense if NJBB was available to take it. So because that is our most recent call sign, that is what we are flying. Very common for ships to fly their call signs when under tow.
Here's an interesting question we got in the chat. Why does the United States Navy give their ships to other countries when they don't need them anymore? Why do they turn this into a museum? The United States Navy does give their ships to other countries. They sell them to allied countries fairly often. It is not uncommon at all. The question is does that allied country want one of these things? Ships that are either just ancient, not really practical to be used anymore, or are otherwise they just don't want them, expensive to run. They don't take. Not to mention some ships are offered to other countries because of the material that's on them. So it's not always up for sale, but it is a possibility for some ships. So like some of the Perrys that are in the Navy Yard could go elsewhere.
Smaller navies tend to need multiple smaller ships so that they have the crew to be able to man them and so that one can be underway patrolling at any given time. Keep in mind, you realistically need about 3 ships to have one at sea at all times. One is constantly going to be in the yard getting maintenance. One is constantly going to be conducting training or transiting to and from an area of operation. And one will be deployed at any given time. So rather than this become the flagship of whoever's Navy and the only ship in their Navy because every single sailor they have has to be on board, it makes more sense for them to have 6 smaller ships with that number of crew so that they can have 2 deployed at any given time instead of 1 deployed 1/3 of the time.
Okay, so it is just starting to come into our view, just slightly off the way of the camera because of the way the stanchion is, but we can see our pier for the first time in 90 days. So for those of you tuning in from the pier, we see you. I'm sure you can see us. You can't miss us.
No, but we're painted in camouflage.
Brian and I basically haven't been back to this pier since we left it 3 months ago. I came back yesterday for like 10 minutes to get something. And we came back after the first cruise to come back and get the car. Actually, I don't even know if you did that. Have you been back to Camden at all?
Was it Memorial Day I came back for a ceremony?
Oh, that's right. You got a ceremony. But moral of the story, we haven't really been here in months. So we are very excited to be back home.
I have no idea how we get home from here anymore.
We still have a planned docking of 125 that is high tide. Our tugboats might adjust that based on what they feel comfortable with. Our tugboats today are all McAllister tugs with Joe Benton in charge. He makes the final call whether or not we are ready to push up against the pier or whether we need to sit off the side of the pier for a little while in deeper water until high tide arrives. Still to be determined.
Just so you guys are aware, we're already pointing in the right direction. So the ship is going to be tugged parallel to the pier, but here in the shipping channel. The dredged path from the shipping channel to our pier is a straight shot. So they're going to push the ship into the pier broadside on. That means a tremendous amount of resistance against the side of the ship. So it is going to be slow going as we come up along. So we are still working our way forward. The ship is slow, though, but we broadside to the pier, and then we'll start turning in. Our pier, of course, was built 2000 and 2001. Specifically for Battleship New Jersey to be on display. As far as I know, there was not any pier there previously. The Army Corps of Engineers dredged out the berth and the path from the shipping channel to the pier. and they're in charge of maintaining that. Our pier covers about 1/3 of the length of the ship, south bearing. That means that the breeze is usually coming from either the bow or the stern. It usually comes straight up the river one way or the other. That means that the wind isn't taking the ship, which broadside has a very big sail area, too far. The pier is typically to give the ship a striking appearance from our parking lot as you come up to the ship. It looks like she is angled out to sea and ready to go, but you still get a very nice broadside view of the ship. I think my favorite way that an Iowa-class battleship is docked is probably Wisconsin in Norfolk. I absolutely love, you turn that corner in the city and then there's just a battleship at the red light in front of you. It's like, man, I hope they're turning and not coming my way. And I love that from her pier, you can essentially walk around 3 full sides of the ship. From us, you can really only see. I really love that Iowa is tied up along the length of a pier, so you can walk her inside. That was really fun to do the last time we were out there in LA. And then, of course, Missouri is just in the most perfect location for a battleship ever. Moored right there at, Quay 4 or 5 at Battleship Row in Pearl Harbor. Just off Arizona, bow to bow. What more fitting place for an American battleship is there than that? You can see people on the pier. You can see a big orange blob on the pier.
Yeah, I hear Gritty's there.
Gritty.
I've heard reports that the Fanatic is walking around in 95 degree heat. I've heard Gritty might be somewhere there too.
Gotta tell Captain Benton to speed this up so we can get down to the party.
Someone has mentioned 2026. Yep, 2026 with the 200th anniversary of the Signed Declaration of Independence is going to be huge for Philly. We are already planning our celebrations. However, we're lucky 2025 is the 200th anniversary of the Navy and the Marine Corps. We are hosting all sorts of fun events for that as well. Stay tuned. You'll see lots of that on this channel as we get there.
Both of those institutions were also formed right here in the Philadelphia area. 250 years ago, before the country was even founded.
So we're starting to get fairly close to our pier, but we're still pretty far out in the shipping channel. There's definitely going to be a slow push up against the pier. I have heard rumor that we will have a second stream starting soon, very soon. So you can watch from the pier side as well. So stay tuned for that. Also on the channel, we're going to keep our stream going for a little while as we push up against the pier. But we will have sort of dueling streams for just a moment while we do that. And I have heard that they're going to have the drones up in the air, so they should have some really great views for those who are looking for a second view. They'll miss our super fun commentary, though. Second stream has already started. Excellent. Thank you, folks, for informing us on that. So you get a chance to see a little bit of the party, I think, and our drones as we pull up next to the pier. I can hear the drones buzzing now.
Battleship New Jersey, of course, would have operated drones for most of her career. During World War II and the Korean War, they were, for anti-aircraft practice, the drones would be put up to tow target sleds that the anti-aircraft gunners could shoot at. American anti-aircraft guns with proximity fuses and radar direction control were getting so accurate that it became too dangerous to use manned aircraft for that. The radar was actually able to home in on the tow wire between the drone and the target sled. So drones were being used more and more frequently then. During the Vietnam War, Battleship New Jersey had the control capacity for Snoopy drones. Snoopy was a Dash anti-submarine drone that had been modified for gunnery spotting. We did not have hangar facilities to carry a drone, but the ship escorting us would. And then as it took off, the battleship would take control of it to spot the fall shot of our guns. Our guns can fire about 23 miles. From where we are here on the 08 level, you can see, I don't know, 12, maybe 13 miles. So the guns can fire about 10 miles further than you can actually see. By the 1980s, these drones had been replaced by Pioneer RPVs. They were an early modern UAV. It's made by AEI. Is that enough alphabet soup for you? AEI is still in business making drones for the military. When I used to work on Taney and lived in Baltimore, my roommate actually worked for AEI. So they are in Timonium in Baltimore. So Battleship, New Jersey would have carried those drones for the last couple of years of her career. It seems like there were two separate drone detachments, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. So whichever battleship was staying pier side had their detachment taken off, and it was put on the battleship that was going out to sea at the time. So Missouri and New Jersey probably shared the same drone detachment during that time. The drones came on board in two Connex boxes that would have been sistered up side by side directly under the gun barrels of turret 3 at the fantail of the ship. Operating those drones would have been basically an Atari Genesis joystick. There's a space in the aft superstructure where you can do that. And then the operator, as the drone came in for final approach, would come out above turret 3 where the helicopter control booth is. And from that platform where the glide slope indicator is, he could watch the drone coming in. The drone was RATO, rocket assisted takeoff. So a rocket would shoot it into the air. It had like this little lawnmower pusher engine. And then landing, real simple affair. They basically rigged something very similar to a volleyball net at the flight deck at the stern of the ship. And the guy with the joystick would just crash the thing into the volleyball net. The propellers, it's a pusher propeller. It's at the back of the tended to break off, so they are made out of wood, so they can be easily remanufactured and made again. We have some of the drone propellers on board, although we do not have a Pioneer drone. Missouri does, and there's one in the Smithsonian. If you happen to have a Pioneer drone in your backyard and don't know what to do with it, give me a call. I'm always looking for one.
Here in the shot, you can see our pier. It's off of our starboard side there. We're getting very, very close. We can see there's quite the crowd already waiting for us. We're getting close to the pier. We do have a second stream going if you'd like to watch from the sky. They're going to keep their stream going even after we have found our pier where we will end ours. Otherwise, you'll end up with the exact same view for a while. For those of you who love Battleship New Jersey and found us recently, check us out on the rest of the channel. We still post 5 nights a week. We're going to stop talking about dry dock every day, though I don't think we'll totally stop talking about dry dock. But we'll switch back to our regularly scheduled programming of other maintenance projects on board, the history of the ship, fun random things we find, and what random tight space we can shove Ryan into today. I love our claustrophobia series, as people like to call it. So stay tuned on the channel for more of that content, as well as our final cleanups from this project and what comes next.
I'm fine with tight spaces, just don't give me heights. I don't want to climb anywhere.
This is the guy who just climbed with masts.
It's got a railing around it.
I climbed up that high twice now, I think I did it twice. It took several times to get me up there. It was very scary. It requires a harness. It's not easy.
Your nose starts to bleed about halfway up.
Also that.
You might have to set up base camp and start sucking oxygen.
So while our pier is off our starboard side, off the port side here, we do finally have, you can just see it. We got Jupiter, our little tugboat. Oh, and a very close flying helicopter. Hello, friends. Jupiter is one of the tugboats that originally was there when we were launched, December 7th, 1942. There had been much talk and much hope that she would have joined us for today's cruise. Unfortunately, she was unable to, but we hope that maybe someday she will sail alongside us again sometime soon. Elsewhere, near Jupiter. We've got Olympia and Bakuna. Rumor has it Olympia is going to fire a salute at us. Last I heard, they have been working on training their guns so that way they could move them in the casemate. So that's not the gun they're going to fire at us, I think. They're going to fire their saluting gun. So they've been working hard all week to get that ready for us. Olympia also is in need of some love and attention. So make sure you go check out them when you come to visit us. Olympia is very cool, very special, real one of a kind. There's nothing like Olympia out there. And she's sitting next to Bakuna, which is less one of a kind, but honestly, she's gorgeous too. So everybody loves a submarine. Rumor has it they are going to fire a salute at us. We're not sure at exactly what point they will decide that we have arrived enough to salute us. We're going to fire our gun back at them as well. We're unfortunately going to have to fire our starboard side gun, not our port side gun that's facing them, just because we don't want to fire on our tugboats. And then that'll probably be the end of our gun firing because we're getting very close to our pier, and we don't want to fire on our guests too much. But I can tell you, I'm looking at our pier. Our pier is packed.
Yeah, we can't fire at the pier. Gritty might fire back. That guy's messed up.
Bad things happen in Philly.
Yeah.
We still have a little bit of time as we get pushed up against our pier here, so hang tight, folks, for the last little bit. Thank you, especially for those who have donated to support us, taking tours, and been watching our channel. It's really weird seeing our pier because, one, we haven't seen our pier in 9 days, but it's naked. There's nothing on it. There are many, many people on it, but we have gangways that are supposed to attach to, can't really see the light there. They're supposed to attach to these towers. We've got elevators there, and the elevators and the stairwells go nowhere. So it'd be nice to have the ship pushed back up against the pier, and we no longer have stairwells going nowhere soon. So that'll be really exciting for us. In classic Battleship form, we're firing our guns. That is our saluting gun that keeps going off. It has been asked and totally suggested that we call our friends over on Olympia and we will just tell them to fire when ready quickly. There's a pretty solid echo of the gunfire across the river. We have been on both sides while firing either side. So we generally know. Don't always know when it's coming though. And no, I'm not sure how many times we're going to fire. We're just going to keep firing. For those of you who want even more dry dock action, we highly recommend follow Kid on YouTube, follow Texas, especially on Facebook. They're very active on Facebook, and you can see how these other ships are going through this. Texas is out of dry dock now, but they're still posting a lot of their major restoration work. Kid is going to go in soon. So you can still get your historic ships in dry dock action. Oh, here's something cool, Ryan, that I didn't get the chance to tell you yesterday. So we have our dolphins out, as well as we've got a buoy out that our anchor chain's connected to. The buoy was black when we left. There is now so much bird poop on it. It is white. You see that?
I do see that.
When I came yesterday, there were like 6 birds camped out on it. They seem to have gotten very comfortable. Bouncy castle?
Did we get a bouncy castle?
We got a bouncy castle.
man, we should have been on the pier instead of on the ship.
Hey, John, can you hear me? Yeah, Jack, we hear you.
We can officially make communications with the pier. Excellent.
Roger that. We got an anxious pair full of people waiting on you guys, including the mascots that are having the conversation.
So right now we are pretty close to lined up where we need to be on the pier. So we are now scooching into that, let's start moving closer and closer towards our pier move. That's our pier over there and everybody waiting for us to get back. And our tugboats down here are starting to do that heavy push towards, location. That heavy push towards getting us towards the pier.
Give me contact with the rep here and find out what they're going to do next week.
They have not yet. Let me give them a call.
Before we wrap up our live stream, a couple of last thanks for everybody involved in this project. Of course, today it wouldn't be possible without McAllister. There are tugboats, they're fantastic. We've also got folks from North Star on board. They're doing our line handling, both connecting us to the tugs as well as connecting us and disconnecting us from piers. They're fantastic. North Star has also been helping us with our ballasting and deballasting efforts with Resolve. Resolve Marine's been fantastic with that. We had to move 500,000 gallons of water on the ship, off the ship, on the ship, and now back off the ship. Of course, North Atlantic Ship Repair did the work in the dry dock. They are amazing. We love everybody at North Atlantic Ship Repair, or Philly Ship Repair, as our local branch has been. They are wonderful. They've been really great with us for all of our demands throughout this project. They've managed to pull off some amazing work for, there we go. There was Olympia firing her gun. There's Olympia again.
They are firing now.
We are returning fire upon Olympia. In a moment.
Yeah, it was.
So that was a 5-inch gun we just fired, which I did not know was on our schedule today. Which is awesome. Oh, that's another 5-inch round. We might even do one more. It's off of our stern. Not a great view to see that from up here. One of the great things about our various guns is that they all have a very unique sound. So that's a 5-inch gun. Elsewhere, for other people that were very supportive of this project, North Atlantic Ship Repair, we got a number of wonderful contractors, starting, of course, with CCSI. That is the Corrosion Control Specialists Incorporated. Yeah, we're getting this down. Led by a wonderful group of team, including our friend Felipe. Thanks, guys. We love you. You did a wonderful job. The ship is so pretty. She looks like a model now. Both a model, like a supermodel, and a model of a ship. We also had some wonderful folks who came to help with our UT testing and with the fiberglass and with the welding. In addition to the people who just worked for Philly Ship Repair in the first place, a special shout out to our lovely riggers. They were particularly helpful for every weird random request that came up on a moment's notice when we needed things. They were also the first people to call us and tell us that something cool was happening so we could videotape it for you guys. They have been truly wonderful. And everybody back in the office there.
And they listen to Crane.
And they listened to Crane. The burgers were super cool. They always wanted to show us the neat stuff. Back in the office, we got Donna and Bill and Chris and Chris and Chris and Chris and Chris and everybody else named Chris that works there, and Bill, and all the people in QA who've been with us all along. So special thanks to them. And of course, special thanks to all of our lovely viewers who tuned in with us on this project over the course of the last 9 days. We're going to see if we can get a... That's a light.
Jack, that's the thing that I really do. I'm very happy.
We're getting very close to our pier now, folks. We're not quite there yet, but we are getting close. Again, we have a second live stream going where you can watch the drones from up in the air if you'd like to tune in for those as well. Coming soon to a battleship near you, we're going to paint our freeboard. That's the stuff above the waterline on the hull. So that's all going to get painted sometime soon. We're continuing working on the deck. As we work on the deck, we are painting the rest of the verticals, the walls on the exterior of the ship. Interior work on the ship is never ending. A lot of that work is from our never tired volunteers who just keep showing up. If you'd like to volunteer, please do go to battleshipnewjersey.org/volunteer. And that should get you the information that you need. Email volunteers@battleshipnewjersey.org or education@battleshipnewjersey.org. Just reach out to us and we'll tell you what you need to know. And again, keep tuning in. We post on this channel 5 nights a week, Monday to Friday, usually at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We won't have a video tonight. This was our video for the day. But we've got new exciting things coming soon tomorrow. It's only Thursday.
Ron, this is Rachel. Where are you?
I'm on the 08 level.
One of the things I can see really clearly from here as we look towards our pier is underneath our elevator tower, I can see the mountain of teak that we pulled off our deck. Things I almost forgot about. We have been replacing the ship's wooden deck over the course of the last 5 years, 6 years, something like that. We still have a little ways to go. We're working through the superstructure. We're mostly done with the main deck. The last section should be finished this summer. Now that it is officially summer, today is the first day of summer. We can tell it's 95 degrees.
So on the pier, we can see the man lift that's going to get us off of the ship. It is going to take several days to get all the hotel services back up. This is going to include putting the gangway back in place to get access to the ship easily without the man lift. That's going to include things like electrical power. That's going to include things.
Yes, again.
That's going to include things like internet. That's going to include things like potable water, sanitary water, discharges. All of that has to be reconnected. It's pretty heavy duty for battleship scale stuff. So all that's going to be done with cranes and man lifts. And most of it is concentrated at the stern near the aft gangway, which means that we can't have the guys plugging in the electricity there at the same time as the guy plugging in the air conditioning. So we have to stagger it one day at a time for each group, which means that it's going to take close to 2 weeks to get the ship ready to reopen again. And that's not even counting all the work we have to do inside the ship to get her cleaned up and ready to go. We have to reinstall all the exhibits, many of which were taken down so they didn't get damaged while we were in the yard or in transit. Oh, there's Gritty.
I can see Gritty and looking at it. That's good.
We have to heavily clean the inside of the ship. There's going to be... People keep thinking that this is the end of the project and the work's over. The work is just beginning, and then once we finish that, our real jobs start again, and we're open to the public again in early July. And then we're doing what's actually on our job resumes, so or on our job descriptions. So the work is far from finished, and as soon as we've got the ship open and ready to go again, we kick off our next capital project. We're still working on finishing the deck. We're still working on painting the above water parts of the ship. All of that is stuff that is going to continue over the next, forever. So when we get from one end of the ship to the other, it's time to start over again.
What was your favorite part of the project?
My favorite part of the project hasn't come yet. My favorite part of the project is when I get off of the ship and jump into the bouncy castle. And they better not break that down before I manage to get off of the ship tonight.
Let's see. My favorite moment, I think, came yesterday afternoon when we hit our draft markings, which said that we were ready to come home. This was really cool. This was the coolest thing I've ever done. I am so glad to be part of this project. I am so glad to be going home.
Do you think I can convince Gritty to get in the bouncy castle with me so we jump up and down arm in arm?
I bet Gritty will bounce you off that bouncy castle.
I'm wearing my steel-toed boots. I can take him.
Oh, I think our black dragon mascot's out there too.
We don't have a black dragon mascot.
Well, there's one there now. There's what we don't. Next to the fanatic. I can see Willie McCain on the pier. Hello. Mr. Ben's out there somewhere too. It's nice to see them. I can see Dan Waller and some of our gun crew waiting for us.
They bringing on the replacement ammo for all the shots we just did.
We fired so many rounds today.
Yeah, and I didn't see us shoot down a single drum. What were they even aiming at?
That is an important question. We need to find out how many curators tall is the bouncy castle. Yeah, we gotta find that out. I believe I see Mayor Vic, the mayor of Camden, here on the pier, waiting to welcome us back. We particularly love our city of Camden. It is a wonderful, beautiful city, and we love how much our locals love us. Starting particularly with Mayor Vic, who shows up to every event we do, and always looks so spiffy. Even though it's 90 degrees outside, most of our crew is in shorts. Showed up for us to be there. Gritty's trying to make Mike's golf cart. The trash one.
Gritty stole a golf cart?
Gritty stole a golf cart.
We gotta call Camden PD. Every time Philadelphians come to New Jersey, they just trash the place.
I can't believe he fits in the golf cart. It's not very big. He has quite the rear end.
Oh, he's been dieting lately, Libby.
Yeah, he normally drives an ATV. There's a little more room for his push.
Let us know when you're ready and we'll fire that
Oh,
shot.
there he goes. There's Gritty. Drive the golf cart away.
Let's get a little bit
Oh, the
closer.
other mascots are not on. This is going to go well.
Yeah, you give the call. We're ready.
Do you think the fanatic knows how to do line handling? Like, I bet if we throw him a line, he could haul the ship in.
A behind-the-scenes story for those of you watching from home. We are in our dry dock. We had a lot of line handlers out, but we, for some reason, didn't have any on the bow at the time. The yard workers needed lines on the bow, which means I got to do some of the line handling in the dry dock. Let me tell you, I was not prepared for this at all. Those guys work hard. Well, I can see Lisa contact, the chairwoman of our board, waving at us. Looks like she showed up from puppy nap today, so she's prepared.
I'm going to get in position to shift colors here in a minute.
So one of the things we did while we were when we got underway was shift colors. We put the big, giant 20 by 30 foot American ensign up amidships, took the smaller ensign down onto the stern. Now that we are returning to our pier, once we have that first line connecting us to the pier, we will shift colors again. The big ensign will come down. So we are getting close to making that shift again. But you got some time. If you want to look over and see where we are. Getting close to the pier, but not quite there yet, folks.
I'm going to grab my folks now.
So because of where we are up in the 08, if we try and point you towards the pier too much, we can see nothing but wall. So we're not going to show too much of the pier approach. Just because of that, we'll end up cutting out fairly soon. We do recommend tuning in on our other live stream on this channel, where you can watch from the pier and from the sky. We got drones on that one. You can see, though, on our starboard side there are dolphins that we're about to pull up to. We'll put mooring lines on them before the day is up. Our tugboats are going to go out and help us with that, so we can get those lines attached there. We do have brand new mooring lines. We haven't replaced the mooring lines in a few years. They are due, so today is the day that she gets new mooring lines. So that's what's going to tie us up to here. We will eventually have chain down as well. It's not fully an anchor. It is anchored to the seabed, but it's not actually an anchor. It's really a giant piece of concrete with a loop on it that we can connect to. But we are getting very close. Once we shift colors, we've got that first line across, we will officially end our live stream. You can switch over to the other stream to enjoy the beautiful views of the final work being done. But we are getting very close. Someone has brought up an excellent point. Our other live stream is mixing our guns. With one last burst of our guns based off the confetti cannons. Fun fact, our confetti cannons are all made out of biodegradable confetti, which is great because definitely some of it's going to end up in Delaware based off where we are. Use biodegradable, protect those animals. Now, our trim is going to stay exactly the way that it was prior to this project. We're going to stay about 10 feet out of trim. We like that. It means the water runs off the ship much easier. So we not proper trim. Our goal is to let the rainwater wash off us instead of letting it just sit on the deck. Okay, guys.